Banks in the 9th District had mixed performance in the third quarter of 2015. Hi, I'm Ron Feldman. I'm the Executive Vice President for Banking Supervision and Regulation here at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And today I'm going to talk about conditions of the banks in our district in the third quarter of 2015. Before we get started, let me remind you what the 9th District is. It consists of the states of Montana, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, the western portion of Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan. And as you can see on the slide, we have a lot of data on banks that I'm not going to cover today. I'm just going to give you a brief summary. And I would encourage you to take a look and get as much detail as you'd like. So turning to our bottom lines, it really was a mixed quarter for banks, both the district as a whole and really in each of the individual states. And by mixed, that really is occurring in two dimensions. First, as you'll see, there were some metrics of performance that were up, there were others that were down, there were others that were flat, and in that sense it's mixed. And it's also mixed in the sense of it's a little bit different for each of the states. So let me first give you a summary for the conditions for this quarter, and then I'll show you three graphs that give you both the absolute level and the quarter-to-quarter change for the three metrics we follow. And as a reminder, we're going to be looking at profitability, loan growth, and the performance of loans or asset quality. So profits were generally speaking flat in most of the states, and by flat I just mean quarter-to-quarter change was pretty low, what we've seen compared to what we've seen historically. There are a couple of states where it's a bit higher, and I'll point that out. Loan growth was generally down. So we had profits generally flat, loan growth generally down, again giving this flavor of mixed, and problem loans were generally flat as well, although you'll see there's a little variation there too, in addition to the other metrics. So in total, sort of a flat, mixed, not that great quarter. So let's walk through each of the three metrics. First, we'll start with profitability. And let me describe what you're seeing. There are two graphs on each of the next several slides. To the left, you're going to see the absolute level for the metric. So the metric here is return on average assets. That's a typical measure of profitability for a bank. And on the right, you're going to see the quarter-to-quarter change. And I would point out to you that the scales of each of the change graphs are going to be different depending on the level of change or the amount of change. So let's start with the change. As you can see, generally speaking, it was up, but the numbers are really small. So around 2 basis points or 4 basis points. And remember, 2 basis points is really 0.2%. So it's a really small change. And you can see for at least three of the states, it was basically flat. So in total, I would say for profits, this was a pretty flat quarter, not seeing much change. A little bit of movement for some of the states, but really not much at all. If you look at the absolute level, which is the graph on the left, you'll see most of the states are at 1.1, 1.2 for an ROA. That's getting back to the historical norm for almost all the states. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing not much of improvement because we're back to what normal looks like typically. So now let's move to loan growth. Here you can see almost uniformly all of the states are declining, with actually a couple of big areas of decline for the UP, for example. And there's not much more to say other than, again, what we're measuring here is annual loan growth. So we're looking at this quarter's amount of loans, comparing it to 1 year ago, and looking at the percent change. I don't think this is too big of a deal because if you look at the left graph, which is showing you the absolute level, it's right around 6%. That's a decent clip of loan growth. If we saw that every quarter, we'd see good growth in the banking system, and ultimately that's going to feed through to profitability. And then finally, I'm going to conclude by talking a little bit about problem loans. They were, again, this is really perhaps the best example of mixed. We've got two states where there was a slight uptick in problem loans. We have two states where there's a big decline, and then you've got three states where there's not much movement at all. So in total, sort of a mixed quarter. And here again, I would not view this as particularly significant, in that almost all the states have really, really, really low levels of problem loans, problem assets. These levels that you see on the left side that show you the absolute level are really the lowest that we've seen since we've been collecting the data since 1984. And so I would say we're basically remaining at a very strong state in terms of the problem assets that banks hold. So let me summarize. For the quarter, the third quarter of 2015, we basically saw a kind of a mixed, not that great quarter. Profits remaining mostly flat, loan growth a little down, problem assets not moving that much. And I think this is kind of the quarter we're going to be seeing going forward as we return to what looks like normal would be for the district, which is really not that much movement quarter to quarter. Thank you.